Assalaamu alaykum, rahmatu, Allahi, barakatu, everyone. I'm continuing my video on the wives of the Prophet ﷺ today. I'm really excited because I am going to continue with Aisha. She's one of the most fundamental wives of the Prophet in my mind, though the other wives should not be forgotten. Aisha was the youngest of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, legally marrying him at the age of 6, though not being brought into his house until the age of 9. She's also considered the most loved by the Prophet ﷺ and considered the best fit for the next wife after Khadija radiallahu anhu passed away. Aisha was also the daughter of Abu Bakr, one of the closest companions to the Prophet. And she's also known for bringing out more human characteristics of the Prophet, such as playfulness and admiration. And it's said by Ibn Kathir that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not restrict or destroy Aisha's childlike qualities, but those qualities were actually rubbed off on the Prophet, which is really amazing because these qualities of her being so young were rubbed off onto him. And they brought out a side of him that is not depicted anywhere else but in the hadith reported by Aisha and those who observed their companionship. This actually was depicted by Ibn Kathir involving a hadith narrated by Aisha. She said, "I would be playing with my dolls with girls who were my friends, and the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would come in and they would slip out of the house, and he would go out after them and actually bring them back, for he was pleased for her sake to have them there." And Dr. Fadel Suleiman, in a report on the relationship between the Prophet ﷺ and Aisha radiallahu anhu, discussed that if people wanted to see a true love story, they should read the tales about the Prophet and Aisha, which is amazing. And he said that it's actually the greatest love story of all time. Aisha is described by Ibn Kathir as a, quote, "a very intelligent and observant young girl with a very good memory," end quote. And she spent the next 9 years of her life after marrying the Prophet with him, and then she grew into womanhood and she remembered all that she saw and heard with great clarity. For to be the wife of the Prophet was even more than extraordinary. And so much happened around him. The Quran continued to be revealed ayat by ayat, and people's hearts were constantly being turned over and transformed, including hers, and she was a witness of so much of all that took place. And Aisha, out of all of the wives of the Prophet, was probably the most knowledgeable when it came to the actions and sayings of the Prophet ﷺ and on the hadith involving marriage. She grew up being married to the Prophet ﷺ and therefore was able to take in all of the information he provided. And though Aisha is held to be held in high regards by most Muslims, many Western thinkers and organizations attempt to change a relationship filled with love and companionship into a story about a pedophile marrying a child bride. However, after doing some research on my part and on anyone else's part, one can come to the conclusion that this is not true simply by taking the time to do the reading of literature that isn't based on ignorance. The first part of the misconstrued idea to address is calling the Prophet a pedophile. The DSM-4, which is actually the diagnostic manual for mental disorders used in the modern world, defines pedophilia with the following criteria: the presence of sexual arousing fantasies, behaviors or urges that involve some kind of sexual activity with a prepubescent child, ages 13 or younger, though onset of puberty may vary, for 6 months or more, and that the subject has acted on these urges or suffers from distress as a result of having these feelings. And the first thing to point out here is the fact that Western society is using a modern definition to define someone that lived over 1,300 years ago. Society in the 8th century is not the same as it is today. In the 700s, Byzantine and Roman emperors were actually marrying youngers between the ages of 6 and 11. And it's interesting that Western thinkers only point out that the Prophet ﷺ was married to a girl at the age of 6, but neglected that this was going on in other societies. Another thing to point out is the fact that even though she was married to the Prophet, Dr. Fadel Suleiman points out clearly and describes it well and discusses it well, that in today's society, the reason for waiting to marry and have children is because people are getting educated. And if you take this factor out, there is no reason to wait to get married. Since puberty is defined as the condition of being, or at the period of becoming first capable of reproducing sexually, marked by maturing of the genital organs, developed of secondary sex characteristics, and in the human and in the higher primates by the first occurrence of menstrual in the female. That means those who have gone through or are experiencing puberty are ready to procreate in theory. And though it is not defined whether or not Aisha had gone through puberty or not, it would have been at the discretion of the Prophet ﷺ whether or not she was old enough to be having sexual relations. And due to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did not consummate the marriage for the first 3 years that they were married, from the ages 6 to 9, it is believed that he was waiting for Aisha to reach puberty before admitting her to his household. And overall, bypassing the surface level of Western criticism on the relationship between Aisha and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, one can understand that the marriage between the two was actually a beautiful relationship. So I definitely hope you enjoyed this enlightenment on the Prophet ﷺ and his youngest and most loving and loved wife, Aisha radiallahu anhu. Stay tuned for my next video, which will hopefully come sooner, inshallah, on the further wives of the Prophet ﷺ. And Assalaamu alaykum, rahmatu, Allahi, barakatu, everyone.